Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to bring back one more time the Hulk versus Cull Obsidian comparison. Now, the last time I did this video about 2 months back, if you haven't seen it, I made a couple of errors with my math because I included Phil Coulson in the teams for both characters, and he was buffing Hulk without buffing Cull Obsidian. So this time around, we're going to be using this team right here, Hulk, Wasp, and Cull Obsidian. Wasp is here to provide the leadership, so that's going to be buffing all of their stats equally. Of course, also this buffs their stats. And her tier 2 passive will make sure that neither of them get stunned, so they don't have, imbalanced numbers in terms of how quickly they can kill bosses. But there are no other team-ups, there's no other buffs to just heroes or just villains, and there's also nothing for strikers to get involved with for either character. As far as the stats go, we're going to do a really quick comparison so you guys can see how eerily similar these two characters are before we jump into 3 different tests. So if you take a look at Cull Obsidian's main stats side by side with Hulk's, you'll see that they're surprisingly similar. The physical attack is almost identical, the HP is only about 1,000 off, but the energy and physical defense is really where Cull Obsidian outshines Hulk, and there's essentially nothing you can do about that to buff Hulk's defense unless you gave him a bunch of Uru, but that would be a waste. So Cull Obsidian, by nature of being a native tier 2 and being a universal type, has insane physical and energy defense stats compared to Hulk. In addition to that, I do want to point out that my Hulk does have a 22 on one of his gears. I did build that up for the extra HP. Hulk also has 2 HP numbers on his gear as stats, whereas Cull Obsidian only has 1. So if Cull Obsidian were to have 2, he would have even more HP than Hulk. And of course, these stats are considering my newly minted heroic uniform. It's not quite mythic, but it's still enough to bring Cull Obsidian up to Hulk's level and actually a little bit beyond, even though he doesn't have a mythic uniform yet. So just imagine how much stronger he would be with that mythic uniform and the extra stats. They're both at level 70. If we take a quick look at the details page, they're almost identical. Hulk, as we switch back and forth between these two, Hulk has a little bit more attack speed, a little bit less crit rate and crit damage, slightly more ignore defense, pretty much the same skill cooldown. The only other notable difference is the resistances. Cull Obsidian has insane base resistances. You can see there 60% on everything except for mind resist, which is whopping, and it will help him theoretically tremendously against PvP opponents like Thor, who deal exclusively in that kind of elemental damage. So if you want a character specifically for AC, or if you want a character specifically for timeline to target those enemies besides someone like Scarlet Witch, who deals mind damage, Cull Obsidian is probably going to be better than Hulk 9 times out of 10, which is wild to say, especially because we know Hulk and Thor have had some pretty epic fights with one another. The only other quick thing I want to point out before we get into the comparisons is the recovery rate. Now, I have 9% recovery rate on my cards, but as you can see here, Hulk is saying that I have 10.8% recovery, or at least he has 10.8% recovery, which is, 1.8% higher than I have on my cards. No big deal. What about Cull Obsidian? 9.93. So he's got an extra 0.93. Apparently, and I think I knew this a long time ago, but I forgot, or I just never mentioned it to you guys, or I did and I forgot about the video, but apparently every single character in the game has a hidden multiplier to their base recovery rate. So a character who heals a lot, like Wolverine and possibly Deadpool in the future, has a crazy base recovery rate multiplier. So that means for every point of recovery rate you give Wolverine, he's actually going to express or have more than 1% recovery rate. And you can see that because my 9% recovery rate on Wolverine turns into 14.3. Now, I don't know exactly what the math is on that. You guys can figure it out, but it's a lot. By comparison, someone like Supergiant is only rocking 10, so she only has maybe a 1.1% multiplier. Someone like Odin, for whatever reason, has 0 recovery rate multiplier, so he's just the flat 9%. So that's pretty crazy to know that, but it only adds about 1% difference between Cull Obsidian and Hulk, so it's not too much to write about. So with those stats out of the way, with those comparisons complete, we're going to jump into the 3 different tests. First 2 are in World Boss. The first one is going to be basically a kill test. We're going to see how long it takes Proxima Midnight on stage 29 to kill both of these characters. We're going to use this team up for both instances with no strikers, so there's no interruptions and there's no fumbling of the stats or altering of the stats. There's no Coulson, no Shuri, nothing. And essentially we're just going to see how long these characters can last, and this is a good way of comparing something like damage reduction, which Hulk has more of. Keep in mind Hulk has a 35% damage reduction flat, and Cull Obsidian has a 15% damage reduction. But on the other hand, on the flip side, Cull Obsidian has much higher energy and physical defenses, and he also has a much higher lightning resist compared to Hulk. So we're going to see here, we're approaching 30 seconds right now that Cull Obsidian has stayed alive. I ran these tests a few times by myself, but I'm sure the results are going to be averaging out to about the same no matter how often I do this. Crits aside, there's not too much. Unless there was a crit immunity leadership, that would make things even more accurate between the two characters. So Proxima should be killing him here. We just passed the 45-second mark, and he should die right here. No, wow, the invincibility proc. They also have basically identical obelisks. They both have 5 seconds invincibility, they both have over 20% HP, and they both have web resist. It's just that Cull Obsidian has 5% more HP to make up for the HP that he's missing on his stats. He's still not dead, eh? He's really lasting a really long time. I didn't expect that. Usually he died at around the 45-second mark. I think I'm lining up all of his invincibility procs with Proxima's attacks, and it's really confusing the numbers here for her. She's having a really hard time killing him. I'm surprised. And hopefully Hulk can last this long, otherwise it's not going to look good for the green monster. So that took 1.5 minutes. That's insane. I think that's a little bit more than it should have been, frankly. I think he would trend a little bit closer to 1 minute on average, but wow, 1:30, that was really long. I think he just got the timing exactly, you know, down to the half second on some of the attacks, lining up with his invincibility to basically save him from that killing blow. Hulk, on the other hand, I don't think he's going to fare as well. My testing put him at about 30 to 40 seconds. So he wasn't far behind Cull Obsidian. I tested Cull Obsidian about 45 to 50 seconds, maybe max a minute. So maybe max for Hulk would be, you know, 45, 50 seconds. Not too much further behind Cull Obsidian, but actually, you know, a little bit worse. I do think that has to do with the defenses and the lightning resist, because we know from testing with, and there we go, 30 seconds. So yeah, that test does favor Cull Obsidian, and I think it favors him for multiple reasons. But in this case, you know, he has over 5,000 energy and physical defense more than Hulk. That really adds up. Maybe not quite 5,000 for the energy defense, but quite a lot. And that does do a lot more for the character than just the damage reduction, it would seem. The second test we're going to do here is a damage test. This one is going to be done on stage 8 because I just want to get it done quickly. They can obviously do higher stages. They can do 20, 21, 22. But rather than fast forwarding through the fight and not giving you the full magnitude of what these characters can do, I wanted to actually get you through the fight so you can see how they operate, see how they play if you're, you know, thinking of building them up, and you want an idea of what they look like when they're pretty maxed out, pretty close to maxed out. I think I could go a little bit higher with the Uruf, but they both rock pretty good sets. And of course the identical stats, almost identical stats, really help them measure up well to each other. So that was about 20 seconds, 22 seconds for the second phase, which is very nice for Cull Obsidian. When he gets those effects, those damage effects, and I don't want to die to this, but I'm like, whoo! Yeah, when he gets those damage effects, the damage accumulation on his third skill to land, it really adds a lot of, it really, you know, just gonna do that again, eh? This is the only thing that really negatively affects the clear speed for both characters. The more often that Proxima does those purple spears, the more often I have to run away from them, the more often, you know, the character loses time. So you do need to keep that in mind. I had it done twice already against Cull Obsidian. As long as it doesn't happen too much more than that, as long as it's not an outlier, the stats should be fairly consistent for both characters in terms of the clear speed. We're not actually going to clear this stage, of course, because we're using Hulk on the other team, and of course if we clear the stage we can't try it again with Hulk, but we're going to get it down here to 1 bar. It should be about 1:30, it looks like. Okay, a little bit A little bit less than that. I had to be careful there. She was about to die. So that took just under a minute 30. Let's call that a minute 20 for Cull Obsidian to kill Proxima. Stage 8, no strikers. Now we're going to jump over and see how fast Hulk does it. In general, I do think that Cull Obsidian does more damage than Hulk because of that damage buff that he gives himself with his third skill. Whoops. I just almost started attacking with Wasp. The other issue that Hulk has is that compared to Cull Obsidian, his attacks are not as fast. You can see on his fourth skill and his fifth skill, there's a lot of just kind of idle attack animation, and that does, you know, eat into his DPS a little bit, but he got to the next phase actually faster. I think his damage is more consistent than Cull Obsidian's. He just has fewer damage spikes. Whereas if Cull Obsidian gets the right situation, and actually this is basically mirroring the fight that I just had, but if Cull Obsidian gets more of the damage accumulation effects, like from these pools of poison, he'll actually out DPS Hulk by a considerable amount with all those additional attack buffs that he gets, up to 60% on his third skill. Kind of like Sharon Rogers' Javelin Blast skill, just not as much, because Sharon Rogers goes up to 225% buff, whereas he only goes up to 60. But 1 minute is pretty accurate for the time it took to get to the last phase. This is, of course, the last phase of the fight. We're, of course, going to be stopping at 1 bar. I don't want to clear stage 8, not for my raid level, not for my potential to get a book. We are going to have to run again here, but we got 1 less of the purple circles. So that does give Hulk a few extra seconds over Cull Obsidian right now. But even with those few extra seconds, you can see that the time is either exactly the same or actually does favor Cull Obsidian by a few seconds. And that is also considering the fact that he had the purple circles twice, whereas Hulk only had them once, but he had those red circles to boot. The last test we're going to be doing here is in Shadowland. Not that it's more or less accurate than the one I just did against Proxima. It's probably a little bit less accurate given the fact that this Daredevil boss likes to iframe a lot, and so those iframes are going to delay how quickly you can kill him. It's going to interrupt some of your attack animations, but I just love Shadowland, and watching Matt Murdock get beat up by 2 colossal monsters is just really fun to me. So we're going to open here with Cull Obsidian. We always want to proc the, and see, the only problem is, yeah, see, he interrupts your skills. We're going to try to count down the number of times that he interrupts, just to have a vague idea of how many potential attacks I missed. But Cull Obsidian's doing a pretty good job of shredding him right now. Dragon Ball Z. And we'll stop at 200,000. So that took about 25 seconds to get him down to do about 3 million and change damage. That's roughly where we want to go. Give or take a couple of hits, it doesn't really matter. It wouldn't have added or taken away a second, so we don't have to be precise with the amount of health that he has left. As long as it's around the same, it's more about how long it took in relation, and that's the iframe at the beginning that we don't want to see. And it's pretty much 1-1 right now because Daredevil did interrupt one of Cull Obsidian's attacks. Stay still, lawyer. He just interrupted Hulk's 5th skill again, so this is going to, and he interrupted his 3rd skill there. This is going to cut into Hulk's time, but it also does indicate that Hulk does have a little bit harder time pinning the opponent down with multiple hits compared to someone like Cull Obsidian. And he just missed his 5th skill there. So partially this is an indictment of Daredevil and how annoying he can be, but it is also indicative that there's more gaps between Hulk's attacks, which makes it a little bit harder for him to basically stun lock an enemy or hit lock an enemy, as it were, with just attack and barrage after barrage. So that took a little bit longer. I think with all of the interruptions, it would have been closer to 225 or 228, which is not too far off from Cull Obsidian. But unfortunately for all you massive Hulk Bruce Banner fans out here, I think that these tests and the ones that I ran on stream and more that I'm going to do in the future are probably going to all indicate what I've been hinting at, and that is Cull Obsidian is a better version of Hulk. Not a colossally big better version of Hulk, but I would say 10% better than Hulk, maybe 15% better than Hulk, both defensively and offensively, and that's pretty awesome for a character who was so lame before he got his uniform. So big ups to the new uniform crew over at Netmarble for doing such a great job. Let me know what you guys think of the comparison and review, and if you're surprised or if you knew all along, and what you think of that recovery rate discovery or rediscovery as well. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. Hit the bell if you don't want to miss any of my videos. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.